Hey friends, today we're going to talk about 2 things you can do to help make the stuff that you're making more perfect, closer to perfection, accepting maybe perfect is an impossible ideal. Part of what happens is that when we're making things, right, inherently they are a reflection of ourselves. And each of us has things that we are good at and some things that we're maybe less good at. Some of us are good at attention to detail, but maybe don't see the big picture. Somehow we're actually pretty good at big picture and struggle to even notice what other people have an attention to detail for. Some people are very good at starting things. Some people are very good at following through. Quite often, it's not the same 2 people. Sometimes people are good with numbers, or good with words, good with art, good with logic, good with other kinds of things. And some people will have multiple of these. And it's okay to acknowledge in ourselves that there's things that we aren't the best in. But this is why the answer oftentimes isn't trying to be perfect in every category ourselves. And again, you should work on the areas you can. But more often than not, better output comes from learning how to work more collaboratively, more successfully, more constructively with other people who have a different set of strengths, weaknesses, just differences from us. And there's more to that besides just finding those people. It's getting over our own perception that because they don't do the things that we do as well as we do them, that they don't see the kind of issues or errors or flaws that we have an eye for, that somehow we are above where they're at. When quite often, if we're at least open to the possibility, we might notice that there are things that we don't see as wrong that they see as wrong, that there are strengths that they bring that we are not as good at. And again, it may not always be as simple or straightforward as coder and programmer, or as writer and artist, or as something else. It might be something as different as starting and finishing, as attention to detail, as big picture, these other kind of dimensions besides skill category, where better things come out of people finding a way to collaboratively work together in which they can either help cover for one another's weaknesses, or they can perhaps help each other spot issues which would be visible from the outside regardless. Often the deficiencies, the gaps, the things that, and we can still work on those, but the things in us are much harder for us to see. If we could see them, we probably would have done something about it. It's partly because we don't see it as a problem. We don't even notice that that's a thing about us. It's usually pretty loud and visible to others, whatever that thing might be. And again, we can try to work on that. We probably should. But it's probably an unrealistic, unfair expectation to simply say, well, the way I'm going to achieve better results is by me being great at starting, great at finishing, great at attention to detail, great at big picture, great at code, great at art, great at audio, great at everything you involve in the kind of projects you want to do. And maybe it's not games. Obviously, that's where my brain goes, because that's what it helps so many people do. But that's the first main thing, is figure out how to work more constructively and collaboratively with others to recognize their insights, the things that they raise as issues are equally valid, if on a different axis than the things that we see as issues. And that only when we give each other that patience and that space and that recognition of, I value that you see things differently than I do, and that's why we should work together, rather than, I need someone like me. It's an old business saying, right? 10 clowns don't make a circus. 10 engineers are going to make a bad project. 10 artists are going to make a bad project. 10 writers, bad project. There's benefit to people, and this includes also if you're doing something commercially, business people who I know that, especially if you come from a creative background, teaching background, coder background, etc., sometimes there's some feeling of tension there. But again, sometimes that tension is, in a way that took me a long time to overcome, a recognition that, again, they might see very real, legitimate, valid questions about, is this sustainable? Can this cover this costs? Can we reach the relevant audience? Who is this actually for? Asking questions that the whole thing will benefit from being asked. That won't inherently emerge from those hyper specialists who are looking at, how do I do my part better, from the lens that I've practiced and honed over the years, or that I personally have more an affinity for. So that's the first one, is learn to work more collaboratively, constructively with others. Obviously, is why my work centers around helping people do that. It's as much about that approach to life and the world around us as it is about the games that we're building. Now, the second part, and obviously this is, again, a big part of what I teach people for exactly this reason, because it helps us beyond the way I teach it or what I teach it for, is to spread it out over time. And this is where, if you try to do it all at once, you can't. It's not doable. It can't be done in one sitting. And this is it's a difficult thing to grasp or deal with, in part because so much else what we deal with, and people, they go on their soapboxes and complain about, people want stuff faster and they're impatient and whatever. But it's this very real thing that if our attentional window is small, and we will only move forward on the things that we can do in one sitting, in one weekend, in a sprint, after which we have a hard time picking it up and going back to it, we're very constrained. And so the skill of spreading things out over time is the ability to do it for a few hours a week, to put it down, to come back to it next week, maybe a different day, maybe a certain time as a ritual, to be able to pick it up from there. And just as a simple exercise for this, that I still work with people who are younger and older, all across my age ranges. I train for, again, gain wellness, so I work with people on. But it is something where brain dumping out, okay, there's a certain thing that you have in mind, that you just noticed some things, you were observing in a reference, you were in the middle of solving a puzzle or problem, there's some things you had in mind to do next, dumping that out, so next time we come back to it, we can pick that back up. Something as simple as that. It's a skill. It's a thing to practice. It's a thing that inherently is not a natural reflex or instinct to do. But once you get in the routine of doing it, it makes it easier for you to spread these things out. And the reason why that's so important is because, to go back to our previous point about being different kinds of folks in the world based on our training and interests and just where our experiences in life have equipped us better than some others, and vice versa, is when you spread things out over time, it enables you to, in a sense, be a different person. And this is true where perhaps through different phases of a writing project, you can fully wear your editor hat separate from wearing your writing hat. In a business project, you can be fully wearing your finding a market separate from finding ways to deliver a product or arrange a schedule. That if you're doing game development, obviously there's pre-production and there's testing later phases, all this kind of stuff. There are stages we can break it up into. But if you're trying to learn something new, there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of sides to it. I was talking to one of my members earlier today about he's got an interest in trying to start a side business and talking about these different challenges of finding and building an audience and figuring out branding, figuring out market fit, and trying out what's the overlap of things that he actually likes doing and wants to do that overlap what he can in any way meaningfully sustain doing, perhaps well enough to help pay for someone else to be doing the parts of it that he doesn't particularly enjoy doing. But again, there's a lot of pieces. And as soon as we can spread it out over time so that this week, my few hours I have that I'm in control of outside of work, family life, other obligations, health, other kind of things, those few hours, they're going to go towards working on this piece of the puzzle with full intensity and focus. This next week, I'm going to focus on this other piece. I'm going to get what I can out of this book, this video, this concept. My next week, I'm going to focus on this other kind of question, cycling, rotating in a pattern in a way that we can build up and accumulate over time, versus the idea that you're just going to sit down and have it all happen. As if you could, for example, instead of exercising, just wake up and run a marathon. And it made up for all the years I wasn't doing it. We all know that's not how that works, right? You're just going to devastate yourself. You're going to probably not be able to walk for a while. It is something we build up to. We build a routine. We train around. If we're doing something big and substantial, it takes time to build up to it. But that time is part of the work to benefit from not trying to do it all once, or what can fit in our attention window, to gain practice at that ability to spread it out, to put it down, to come back to it, to make sure these pieces are aligning over time. And I mean, this is, again, goes back to this team thing, this element of, to the extent there are other kinds of people, we can be in ourselves, shift modes, but it's not probably going to happen in one sitting. It helps to be able to come back to it from a different lens of, okay, well, now I'm approaching this from the artist's eye, from the planner, producer's eye, from my programmer's eye. I'm working on focusing on level design this week. My previous week, I was focusing on code or something else about this project that I'm doing. I was recording interviews. Now I'm working on editing. Now I'm working on scheduling. Now I'm working on doing in batch the descriptions, the details for the episodes or being released for this podcast. That comes from spreading it over time. You know, if you try to limit it to what you can do all in one sitting, you're very, very limiting of what you can do next, because a lot of those things can't happen in one hop. They're not one move on the chessboard of life. Now, one of the other benefits to doing this, not just over time, but with a team, with collaborators who are perhaps closer to your skill range in your area, is precisely this thing that, again, they may observe things you're overlooking that you don't even know you're overlooking. Things that are gaps that you don't know are gaps because, again, they seem fine to you. They're the way you've always done it. It's worked out well enough for you. It hasn't been a barrier for you in the kind of classes, jobs, etc. that you've done, the kind of projects you've done. As far as you can tell, it wasn't the problem. But they have a different set of experiences informing that in a way that they can either surface to you, or you can become more aware of in yourself, seeing how someone else does something better, and you can start to borrow. There's some cross-pollination of learning that occurs when there's people who have different backgrounds and approaches to you, that they're doing different sides to it. But, you know, it doesn't mean that because someone has say bad with numbers that they shouldn't be part of the team. It means don't make them your accountant. It doesn't mean that if someone's not a good public speaker that they shouldn't be part of the team. It means, okay, well, don't have them giving presentations. Doesn't mean because someone's inherently not great with attention to detail, they shouldn't be part of the team. It just means don't have them dealing with the legal documents or, again, maybe accounting type lens. But anywho, this is something where, once again, this is the kind of thing I've been training people in for a lot of years, and obvious plug necessarily here for CompleteEveryProject.com, my new video course, which is taking the same planning approach that spreads it over time, builds up to how to do it with a team, how we've done it in home team, how we've done it in the previous groups that I established at Carnegie Mellon and Georgia Tech, both still operating to this day, collectively released over 500 team projects. That these are the principles, techniques, and practices that have made that possible, available in this video course in 4 hours to just try to equip you. And this is, again, something that goes beyond the kind of projects you're doing. To me, it is fundamentally, it is a way of teaching a life practice around a way of seeing the world around us, a way of equipping and growing ourselves and our skills. The examples I focus on there happen to be podcast and YouTube and game development because it just helps to situate learning in real, actual contexts. But these same skills and strategies apply to other things, and I think it's a useful lens on life, including that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to figure out how to work with other imperfect people. And I think I've said it somewhere else before, but if you can't work with imperfect people, you can't work with any people. All of us are imperfect and working on ourselves. So that's it for the day. Hope you'll check out the course at CompleteEveryProject.com. As always, I am not just trying to sell you something. I am trying to improve your life and trying to make my living doing it. So that's part of why, I put so much time and energy into these things. Hope you enjoy it. Hope it helps you. Catch you another day. Bye for now. Go make something imperfect that takes time, that involves other imperfect people.